In today's video, I'm going to dive deep to kind of elaborate on what the Minister of Immigration of Canada, last week Thursday, that was on the 7th of December 2023. The Minister of Immigration came out and he emphasized on three key policy changes that will be happening. And these key changes have to do with international students that they are currently in Canada and those planning to come to Canada. So please, if you enjoy any of this content that I create here on YouTube, please kindly subscribe to this channel and please give this video a huge thumbs up. My aim on this channel is to actually create a valuable video that is going to help you and keep you ahead of the game, and that way you get yourself ready. Okay, so let's dive into the video. One of the key policy that he mentioned that is going to be shifting, he talked about the housing crisis in Canada. As you all know right now, living in Canada is very expensive. And talking about the rent, it's super high. Like you cannot even afford to rent a house in Canada. The last time I was checking, the minimum average of buying a home in Canada, it's around 1 point something million. This is super high. Okay, so he talked about how they will be able to assist the students with the rent and all that. Another key policy that he did mention again is the amount of fund that you're going to show as a student to show as a proof of income. As you all know, it used to be $10,000, but now it's have rose to about $20,635. That is a huge change from anybody trying to come here, trying to go to Canada as a student. You know, this is also different from your tuition. This is after you've done paying your tuition, your accommodation, and all that. So they are kind of tightening things up a little bit. So just in case if you are not aware, I want you to be aware of what's going on. This is no longer the usual $10,000 that you have to have in your account as a proof of fund after paying your tuition. No, guys, it's going to be $20,635. And I'm going to be putting a link on this video where you can actually verify everything I'm saying in this video. This whole thing have generated a lot of mixed reaction all over the social media, and people were just contradicting themselves and all that. And I'm also going to link a video at the end of this video so you can actually hear what I'm saying from the minister himself. His name is Mark Miller. He is the Minister of Immigration of Canada. The last key point policy that he mentioned, which is super good for everybody, it's the waiver program. As you all know, in 2022, I believe in November 15, 2022, there was a temporary policy that allowed international students to work off campus while school is in session. And you can actually work up to 40 hours while school is in session. I think that is great. That is awesome for all international students. And I know you guys love it. And that temporary policy was set to expire this year, 2023, December 31st. So in a couple of days, it's going to expire. But last week Thursday, I mean, on the 7th, the minister actually came out to say, hey, there's going to be a new change. And this is what's going to happen based on the data that they have on hand. Based on the data that they have on hand, they are going to extend that waiver until April 30th, 2024. That way, international students can keep working outside, can still be working uh, outside the campus while school is in session for up to 40 hours. You see, I understand what this means. Working 20 hours a week, guys, it's hard. With all the inflation, the food is expensive. If you go to grocery store with $100, you can't get nothing. Everything is so expensive, and that is where he kind of emphasized on, trying to see how they can extend this until April, right? Okay, so I'm going to be reading some of the article of what he said. This is what he said here. He said, the waiver on the 20-hour per week limit on the number of hour international students are allowed to work off campus while class is in session will be extended till April 30th, 2024. Guys, this is good news. So if you are a student in Canada right now thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen to this temporary waiver after it's over? Am I going to go back to 20 hours a week? I understand what this 20 hours a week does. You don't get nothing. Let's say you're making $15 per hour and you work 20 hours per week, you're only getting about $300, and that is before tax. And after tax, you're probably going home with $200, depending on what you have going on. If you are deducting 401k and all insurance and all of that, you might even go home with $100. I know, which it's not even enough for your Uber, or if you're taking a bus. So this is hard, right? So I really see a need for them to try to extend this policy, that way, with the inflation, to support the student. And this is also what he said again on this article. International students already in Canada, as well as applicants who have already submitted an application for study permit as of December 7, 2023. So international students who are already here in Canada, you are good. And again, he did mention of, if you have already submitted your application before or on December 7, you are covered. You can take advantage of this program, which is awesome. Like, I think this is great for those of you coming to Canada. Let's say you plan on arriving here in January and all of that. You don't have no problem. You are good to come here and still get your full-time job, 40 hours a week, work off campus while your school is in section. So this is really good news. Thumbs up to Canada. It's really, they are really killing it, better than here in the United States. In the United States, you are still allowed to work for 20 hours. I think this is awesome. Okay, so let me go back. Until December 7, 2023, we'll be able to work off campus for more than 20 hours per week. Until that time, we will continue to examine options for this policy in the future, such as, listen to this, guys, such as expanding off-campus work hour, such as expanding work hour for international students to 30 hours per week while classes in session. So I think what they're trying to do here is, if at the end of this waiver, come April 30th, 2024, they are trying to see how they can, merge this for it to be like temp permanent, for students to start working off campus 30 hours a week. You might probably think, okay, 40 and 30, 10-hour different. But I still tell you, just think about it. Just take a moment. Just after the waiver, let's say you go back to 20 hours. Would you rather prefer to go back to 20 hours per week, or are you going to take the 30? It's a win-win thing. If at the end of the day they said, okay, what's going to happen in Canada, this is going to be permanent, okay? Every international student are going to be eligible to work up to 30 hours per week. I think this is still good. If you are working 30 hours per week and you are in a job where you're making about $20 per hour, you are still going to be making a significant amount of money. That means you're going to be making up to $600. If you have a job of $20 per hour and you're working 30 hours in a week, you're still going to be bringing home about 600. I mean, that is before tax. Let's say after tax, you might end up within 450 to 500. I think this is significantly awesome for all international students in Canada. So that is kind of the breakdown that he talked about the 20 hours and trying to extend it to 40 hours. It's going to be a temporary thing until April 2024. That is awesome. Now let's go back to the mixed reaction that was going on regarding the increase for the proof of fund from $10,000 to $20,635. There's so many risk reaction going on right now in social media, and people are like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? He said, oh, here, starting next year, prospective students will need to show they have access to $20,635 after paying for travel and tuition. So this is after you paid for your travel and the tuition. I don't know. I don't know. I just don't have much opinion on this. But the people that are going to feel this the more, it's those international students that want to come to Canada. So after paying for your tuition and your travel expenses, instead of $10,000 previously required, so now you have to have $20,635. Okay, let me read the article straightforward. Okay, starting next year, prospective students will need to show they have access to $20,635 after paying for travel and tuition instead of the 10,000 previously required. Miller also said this is just the kind of back and forth they were just going. He said doubling of financial requirements before coming to Canada is to help students deal with the impact of inflation, including the high cost of food and rent, guys. I talked about working 20 hours. What is that going to do to you? It basically won't do nothing much for your life, like at all. So if at the end of the waiver program, if you end up staying 30 hours, like I said, if you work 20 hours, if you have a $20 job and you work 30 hours a week and you get 600, and after tax, you might go on with around 450, 500, depending what your tax bracket is. Okay. So as you can see at the end of his comment, he said the reason is to help international students prepare for the inflation of what's going on. Because, like I said in the beginning of this video, there is so much inflation in Canada. Like, the rents are super high. They are super high. You cannot buy a home, not to talk about the rent. It's super high. Okay. So, guys, I'm going to link the video where he said all this three key policy and all that. And if you enjoy any of this content, please kindly don't forget to give this video a huge thumbs up. What I do on this channel is to keep you up to date and let you know what's going on with immigration, traveling to Canada, studying in Canada, the United States, and what you need to know before you come here. Okay, I love you guys and thank you, and I will see you on my next video. Peace.
So next year, we intend to implement targeted pilots that will test new ideas aimed at helping underrepresented cohorts of international students to pursue their studies in Canada. And we also plan to work with institutions, provinces, and territories to provide students with what they need to succeed. And I will have more to say on this a little earlier on in 2024. I'd also like to update you on 3 temporary policies affecting international students that were set to expire by the end of the year. The main purpose for an international student to be in Canada is to study. However, since most students are currently halfway through their school year and some are working full-time to meet their needs, we will extend the temporary policy that has allowed eligible international students to work more than 20 hours per week through till April 30th of 2024, the end of the academic year. We're currently examining options for this policy in the future, but we know that 40 hours a week is untenable if you're a student, and are looking to potentially expand off-campus work hours for international students up to 30 hours per week while class is in session. Our data shows us that 80% of international students work more than 20 hours a week. We first implemented distance learning measures in 2020 due to the travel restrictions during the pandemic and reduced them in scope in September of 2022. But since the vast majority of international students are now actually studying in person in Canada, we're extending this measure only to those starting programs before September 1st of 2024. And finally, in response to the labor market disruptions over the pandemic, we introduced a temporary policy granting post-graduation work permit holders an additional 18-month open work permit if needed. Those with a post-graduate work permit expiring by the end of this year remain eligible to apply, and we won't be extending that policy after that. Protecting and supporting international students from becoming vulnerable, whether that's to bad actors or simply meeting their needs in Canada, is one of the main goals of our review of the international student program. These students contribute to boosting Canada's economy. Taking these additional steps today contributes to our long-term goal, which is to preserve the integrity of the international student program. It'll be key in all this to work with our provincial and territorial counterparts, which have an important share of the jurisdiction and responsibility in this, as well as other education and stakeholders, including the learning institutions themselves, so that we can ensure that international students really are set up for success in Canada. Thank you. And on